Hi, my name is David Santana. I'm making this video to analyze the three pieces of work for Communications 3260 that discuss the relationship between vulnerability and storytelling. So, the first piece that we went over is by a man named Pelias, Dr. Ron Pelias. And Dr. Ron Pelias he starts out his piece by giving a quote that says, "Performance is a profound engagement with the vulnerable self. It is an act of being nakedly human publicly." He then goes on to talk about the experience of talking in public and being in front of people and just how it physically feels and mentally feels to be on display, um, and how it is a universal experience. And the way that he describes it is so well put that it reminds us of the feeling that we have when we speak publicly. And this is really interesting because it is something that is just true. And even though we'd like to think that when we get up to speak publicly, it'll be perfect, and that's the goal, it that is problematic because that disregards the experience of speaking publicly and how that is just so different from how it actually goes. Um, the second piece is by Brene Brown. Brene Brown is a researcher and a storyteller, and she talks about the kind of the dynamics between people's experience with vulnerability and their experience to love each other or love themselves and express themselves. Dr. Brene, Dr. Brene Brown uh, talks about how one of the biggest obstacles to expressing oneself is shame and fear, and how it is essential to experience shame and fear in order to express oneself. Um, and she kind of goes on to say how the experience of trying to numb oneself to shame and fear in order to function and express oneself actually numbs the self to the experience itself of expression and experience. I feel like I use experience a lot there. But we're continuing. So, um, she talks about how it is courageous to be imperfect and it is courageous to speak. And so, speaking has to be imperfect in a way. Um, and so that's kind of what she explored. And then the third piece is about kind of feeling vulnerable in public places. It's called Crying in H Mart, and it's by Michelle Zauner. Um, she talks about how she goes to H Mart, which is a public place, and how it is constantly bringing emotions to her. How she cannot go and buy groceries without having some kind of spiritual experience. Um, but how that does not get expressed. She talks about how she feels that she is not Korean, but when she goes to H Mart, by exploring painful memories and good memories, she connects more to that heritage. And how everyone there must be connecting to some sense of heritage. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there. Um, and this is really interesting because it just it shows that when you are out in a public place, your instinct is to numb the feelings of grief, to numb the feelings of pain and loss. But the fact is that those are motivating your very actions of being there in the first place, and how it's really quite beautiful because in order for her to go to this place, she had to experience that pain and that loss. And that pain and that loss is what encouraged her to go and try and connect with this part of herself. So, I connect with these pieces quite a lot. The first one I think is really interesting because public speaking is very scary. I like to think personally that I'm decent at public speaking. I grew up with 8 siblings, so uh, just being around the house, all speaking felt like public speaking. So I was always speaking to an audience, and even now in college, as I have to get up and present things in front of people that I don't know, even though I may have the ability to kind of go on autopilot, even then it is extremely scary and extremely nerve-wracking. Polias was really good at describing the feelings of being in that situation. And by the way that he described it, I felt very connected to all of the people that I see public speaking, from professors to professionals that work in certain fields to YouTubers. All these people are making a very brave move by doing this. And then today we had our performances in the recital section of our class. And it makes me appreciate that while I was going up there and fighting through these physical feelings to speak to everyone, everybody else was as well. And that is part of the experience of expressing oneself. The second one I connected to quite a lot because it is essential to embrace vulnerability in order to fully experience life. And if you don't, then you are numbing yourself to life in a way, in the human condition. This is something that I have experience with. There's many things in my life that, because it makes me feel insecure, I don't address in my relationships with other people and in my relationship with myself. And it was very powerful to hear her talk about this because it made me realize the importance of vulnerability, not as a weakness but as a strength and something to be leaned into. The third one I found really beautiful because I am the child of immigrants, and my parents are very big into ethnic food. I'm from Cuba. My parents are from Cuba. And so for them to try and pass on some sense of heritage, it is a really beautiful thing to me, but I don't know why it's beautiful to them. And this kind of gave me an insight as to why it's such a beautiful experience to feel the grief and feel the pain, and how that encourages you to act in ways that enrich your life. So these 3 pieces are very much related to Black is the Body because Emily Bernard, by writing this book, is sort of making herself emotionally naked to everybody that reads it. There's nothing hidden, and she exposes the pain and grief of her very experience as being a human, particularly one that not everybody can relate to because it is the experience of being Black in America and academia. Um, but the importance of vulnerability is that she has to lean into the pain and confusion of this topic in order to learn anything about it and in order to teach anything about it. So I think throughout the entire book of Black is the Body, we are going on this journey of experiencing Emily's vulnerabilities and insecurities and how she addressed them. And it helps us to learn many facets about her experience as a person. And it is beautiful. So the three of these kind of just show altogether that vulnerability isn't just an essential part of telling a story, but it's an essential part of living. And that kind of ties into the fact that telling stories is an essential part of living. Just every day going through your life, you have to talk and tell stories. But as we see, you have to embrace the fear and the vulnerability in order to talk openly. Otherwise, you will be leaving out narratives. So that kind of reminds me of the TED Talk that we had watched earlier by Chimamanda, and how she is trying to emphasize the importance of telling and listening to all stories in order to have a more holistic understanding of something. And that this is just so true in every facet of life. We pick and choose what we find pleasing to us and what we find pleasing to others in order to optimize our effectiveness of liking ourselves and liking others. But in reality, the experience that we all leave out is one of the most important experiences, which is pain and vulnerability. This is essential to expressing one's full story holistically, and expressing one's story holistically is essential to understanding one's story. So, it's very interesting stuff, and I think it kind of makes you embrace the good and the bad of storytelling, the pain and the achievement that comes with expressing vulnerability and conquering it in a way, owning it. So, thank you.